Have you ever wondered if loyalty could actually be more dangerous than betrayal? It sounds absurd at first. We're taught to admire loyalty, to value it in our friends, our employees, our leaders. Loyalty is seen as a virtue, something noble, something that builds trust and holds groups together. But what if that's only part of the story? What if in many cases the people who are most loyal are the very ones who keep dysfunction alive? What if their loyalty isn't holding the system up, but keeping it from evolving? Here's what Machiavelli saw clearly, long before modern psychology confirmed it. Betrayal is visible. It's an attack you can respond to. But blind loyalty? It's subtle. It hides behind good intentions. And that makes it far more dangerous. Because loyalty, when placed in the wrong hands or directed at the wrong cause, doesn't protect power. It poisons it. And it might be the reason great empires, companies, and even families collapse from within. Niccolo Machiavelli was not your typical philosopher. He didn't write about how the world should work. He wrote about how it actually works, in all its messiness, manipulation, and moral compromise. While others were chasing ideals, Machiavelli was observing reality. He watched kings fall and tyrants rise. He saw how charm replaced competence, how deception beat honesty, and how power often went to those least worthy of it. And he dared to say what others wouldn't. That morality and politics don't always mix, and maybe they shouldn't. He believed that to survive in a world full of wolves, you can't act like a sheep. You have to understand the game, not just hope it plays fair. That's why his work, especially The Prince, remains so provocative, even today. Because Machiavelli wasn't trying to comfort you. He was trying to wake you up. And once you see what he saw, you can never look at loyalty or leadership the same way again. In this video, we're going to explore a truth that makes people uncomfortable. And for good reason. Loyalty, when it becomes blind, isn't just a personal flaw. It's a systemic threat. It can rot institutions from the inside. It can silence truth-tellers, reward incompetence, and give power to people who should never have had it in the first place. And here's the twist. It often looks like everything's fine, right up until it all collapses. That's the danger. Not disloyalty, not sabotage, but unchecked allegiance to the wrong people, the wrong ideas, the wrong causes. Machiavelli understood this better than most. He saw that leaders don't fall because of outside enemies. They fall because of the people closest to them, the ones who choose obedience over honesty. So in the next few minutes, we'll break down why blind loyalty is so seductive, so dangerous, and exactly how it leads even the strongest systems to their knees. Through Machiavelli's eyes, nothing will look the same. If this message resonates with you, hit subscribe and let's dive deeper. Machiavelli didn't believe in blind loyalty, not because he was cold, but because he was clear-eyed. He watched leaders fall, not because they lacked love, but because they misunderstood human nature. In The Prince, he writes, "A wise ruler should not rely on loyalty, but on control and fear." It's a brutal line, but not without reason. To Machiavelli, loyalty wasn't a virtue. It was a risk. A leader who bets everything on devotion is leaving power to chance. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. People don't stay loyal out of principle. They stay loyal when it benefits them, when the power is strong, when the rewards are real, when disloyalty has a cost. Take those away, and the loyalty vanishes, sometimes overnight. That's why he argued a smart ruler doesn't expect loyalty. He secures it. Not through friendship, not through faith, but through systems of leverage, influence, and self-interest. Because the most dangerous kind of betrayal is the one you didn't see coming, from someone you thought was loyal. Without power or incentive, loyalty becomes fragile, sentimental, easily broken. And when things go wrong, when the pressure rises, it's not your enemies you have to worry about. It's the people closest to you, the ones who smiled, nodded, agreed, until they didn't. Blind loyalty is more dangerous than betrayal, and here's why. Betrayal is easy to spot. It shows its teeth. It acts with intent, with a clear motive. You might not like it, but at least you can see it coming. Blind loyalty? That's different. It wears a smile, it nods in agreement, it says all the right things and while quietly leading you into the dark. And that's what makes it so dangerous, because it looks like support until it's too late. A traitor stabs you in the back, but the blindly loyal, they block the truth from ever reaching you in the first place. They filter what you hear. They say everything's fine. They protect your ego instead of protecting your mission. And when you're surrounded by these people, you lose your grip on reality. You start operating inside a bubble, where bad ideas sound brilliant and warning signs go ignored. Machiavelli understood this trap. He saw that blind loyalty creates a false sense of security, a safe zone that isn't real, a zone where no one pushes back, where no one tells you when you're wrong, where silence replaces strategy. And that silence, it kills more leaders than open rebellion ever could. Because by the time you realize something's wrong, it's already everywhere. Blind loyalty doesn't just keep you comfortable, it keeps you blind. So if you think betrayal is your biggest threat, think again. It's the yes men, the loyalists, the ones who never question, never challenge, never warn you when the cracks start forming. Toxic loyalty doesn't just silence people, it builds an echo chamber, an environment where only one voice matters, and that voice belongs to the leader. Everyone else just reflects it back. At first it feels like unity. Everyone agrees, no tension, no resistance. But that's the danger, because when no one pushes back, no one tells the truth. Leaders surrounded by blind loyalty stop hearing what they need and only hear what they want. They're told they're brilliant even when they're wrong. They're told everything's fine even when it's falling apart. People nod, smile, agree. Not because they believe, but because they're afraid to speak. That's not loyalty, that's fear in disguise. And when fear runs a system, the system breaks. Mistakes go unchallenged, problems are ignored, feedback disappears. And worst of all, the organization forgets how to adapt. It loses its internal resistance, the very thing that keeps it alive. Over time, truth becomes dangerous. Dissent becomes betrayal. And honest people either fall silent or leave. What's left is a room full of yes men, a hollow leadership, a fake sense of control. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He saw that unchecked loyalty doesn't strengthen power, it isolates it. Leaders who are never challenged grow blind. They lose their grip on reality, and they start believing their own echo. That's when the real damage begins. When leadership stops listening, collapse is just a matter of time. Not because of outside attacks, but because no one on the inside dared to say, "This isn't working." Blind loyalty doesn't protect the mission, it protects egos. And in doing so, it slowly destroys everything it claims to serve. History doesn't just suggest blind loyalty is dangerous, it proves it. Time and time again, powerful systems have collapsed not from betrayal but from obedience, and the cost is massive. Take Nazi Germany. Hitler didn't rise alone. He was surrounded by loyal generals, advisors, and citizens, often all too afraid or too devoted to question him. Even as the war turned suicidal, they followed orders. They told him what he wanted to hear. They silenced dissent and ignored reality. In the name of loyalty, they helped destroy a nation. Blind loyalty turned smart people into silent followers, moral men into accomplices. The result? A world at war and a legacy of devastation that still haunts history. Now take Enron. At its peak, it was one of America's most admired companies. On the surface, everything looked perfect. But behind the scenes, executives were hiding massive fraud. And their teams, many knew. But they said nothing. Why? Loyalty. They didn't want to question leadership. They convinced themselves they were protecting the company, but in truth, they were protecting power. That silence destroyed careers, wiped out retirement funds, and shattered public trust. In both cases, loyalty wasn't a virtue. It was the poison. It didn't prevent collapse. It guaranteed it. Machiavelli warned us, the real danger isn't always an enemy at the gates. Sometimes it's the loyal silence inside the walls. Blind loyalty doesn't appear by accident. It's manufactured by systems that reward silence and punish truth. In many organizations, loyalty isn't measured by integrity or results. It's measured by obedience. Say the right things, agree with the right people, and you move up. Ask the wrong questions, even politely, and suddenly you're not a good fit. That's how systems protect themselves, not with force, but with culture. A culture that rewards those who complied and quietly pushes out those who don't. Truth-tellers are labeled difficult. Independent thinkers are seen as threats. People who challenge the status quo are isolated, not for being wrong, but for being inconvenient. Over time, that creates a yes-man culture, where people learn that staying quiet is safer than being honest, where promotions go to the most agreeable, not the most capable, and where everyone starts saying what the leader wants to hear, instead of what they really believe. The result? A closed loop, no correction, no resistance, just one voice echoing louder and louder until the system forgets how to think for itself. This is how good companies go bad, how promising governments lose their way. Not because of one bad actor, but because no one around them had the power or the courage to say, "Oh, stop." Machiavelli would have called it a political trap, a structure that feeds on loyalty and starves out truth. And once that cycle starts, breaking it becomes almost impossible. Unless someone dares to speak and someone in power dares to listen. When blind loyalty becomes the norm, something dangerous happens. Talent gets replaced by obedience. People stop asking who's the most capable and start asking who's the most loyal. And slowly a new hierarchy forms. The bold get sidelined, the competent get ignored. The loyal, but mediocre, rise to the top. Why? Because they don't challenge the power above them. They don't ask hard questions, they just nod, agree, and execute, no matter how flawed the plan. At first it seems harmless, a few bad hires, a few independent voices pushed out. But this isn't just a personnel issue, it's a systemic rot. Mediocrity hires mediocrity. Loyalty hires more loyalty. And soon the entire structure is made up of people who don't think critically. They just comply. Risk gets hidden. Feedback disappears and leadership becomes blind to its own decline. This is how empires crumble without a single shot fired. They rot from within. Not because of enemies, but because of internal silence. Because competence was sacrificed in the name of comfort. And because those who spoke the truth were labeled as threats. Machiavelli saw this clearly. He understood that when power fears dissent, it surrounds itself with flatterers, not challengers. And once that happens, the downfall isn't a question of if, but when. So no, blind loyalty doesn't build stability, it builds a house of cards. And when the wind shifts, the collapse is total. Not because of betrayal, but because no one left inside had the strength or the skill to stop it. To Machiavelli, betrayal wasn't always a failure of character. Sometimes it was the highest form of political intelligence, a necessary move when loyalty served corruption, incompetence, or decay. Because not all loyalty is good, not all betrayal is bad. We're taught to see betrayal as a moral collapse, a selfish act. But Machiavelli saw something else, the possibility of moral clarity. The decision to stop propping up what no longer deserves to stand. When loyalty is used to justify silence, to protect the powerful, or to maintain the illusion of stability, then choosing to walk away isn't weakness, it's strength. A betrayal in this sense becomes the refusal to continue serving something that has lost its legitimacy. It's not about revenge, it's about realignment, with truth, with principle, with reality. Machiavelli understood that politics is not a fairy tale. It's not a place where loyalty always leads to reward and betrayal always leads to ruin. Sometimes the exact opposite is true. He believed that strategic betrayal could be a tool of survival, or even of progress, a bold reset when old loyalties become chains, a purge of the rotten to make space for the necessary, because blind loyalty destroys from within. But calculated betrayal, when it's in service of a greater good, can be the act that saves everything. That's why Machiavelli didn't trust those who were loyal no matter what. He trusted those who could think critically, choose wisely, and walk away when the cost of staying became too high. In his view, betrayal wasn't the end of honor. It was often where honor finally began. Loyalty only has value when it's tested and retested over time. Not assumed, not demanded, and definitely not given forever without question. Because real loyalty isn't about sticking with someone no matter what. It's about staying aligned with values, purpose, and truth, even when that means saying no. The problem begins when loyalty shifts from principle to personality. When people stop asking, "Is this still right?" and start saying, "Well, I owe them." But you don't owe blind obedience to anyone. Not a boss, not a friend, not a leader. You owe your loyalty to what's bigger than any one person. The mission, the values, the truth. Machiavelli knew that loyalty tied to individuals was fragile and dangerous because people change, power corrupts, and when your loyalty is personal, it can drag you down with them. That's why loyalty must be conditional, not transactional but principled. It should survive scrutiny, not avoid it. It should welcome challenge, not fear it. Healthy systems encourage people to ask hard questions, to reevaluate where their loyalty lies, and to walk away when that loyalty begins to serve ego over ethics. Because loyalty without regular reflection turns into submission, and submission over time turns into complicity. You can respect someone deeply and still disagree with them. You can be loyal to a cause while challenging how it's being carried out. And if your loyalty can't survive honest feedback, maybe it wasn't loyalty at all. Maybe it was just fear wearing a noble name. The first step is personal, because systems don't change unless people inside them do. Start by developing critical thinking, not just about others, but about yourself. Ask, why am I loyal? Is it earned? Is it aligned with truth, or is it just habit, fear, or comfort? Loyalty should never be automatic. It should be a choice you make with eyes open and a choice you're willing to revisit. Next, create space for risky honesty, not just in others, but in yourself. Speak when it's uncomfortable. Ask questions no one wants to hear, not to tear things down, but to keep them honest. Because truth-telling isn't rebellion, it's maintenance. It's how systems stay sharp. It's how you protect the mission, not just the people leading it. When we punish honesty, we invite collapse. When we reward silence, we lose the very people who care enough to speak up. So be the one who speaks, not recklessly, but responsibly, with clarity, with courage, with care. Finally, shift your loyalty away from personalities and toward principles. Don't tie your values to a single person, no matter how charismatic or well-intentioned they seem. People are fallible. Principles endure. Be loyal to truth. Be loyal to the mission. Be loyal to integrity, even when it makes you the outlier in the room. Because real loyalty isn't about standing by someone no matter what. It's about standing by what's right, especially when it's hard. That's how you stay loyal without losing yourself, and how you stay committed without becoming blind. Change doesn't just happen at the personal level. It has to be built into the system. Because even the most courageous truth-teller won't speak if the system punishes them for doing it. That's why the first step is protection. Create structures that shield people who speak honestly, not just in theory but in practice. Anonymous reporting, whistleblower protections, public commitments to transparency. These aren't just bureaucratic features. They're lifelines for truth inside a system. And beyond protection, there must be reward. Don't just tolerate dissent, encourage it. Treat thoughtful pushback as a sign of engagement, not insubordination. Because systems thrive when they are challenged, and rot when they are merely obeyed. Second, shift how you measure success. Stop rewarding obedience as the gold standard. Loyalty isn't how many times someone says yes. It's how much they move the mission forward. Measure results, celebrate outcomes, and value those who deliver impact even if they don't always nod in agreement. Finally, build a structure that doesn't rely on any one person, no matter how brilliant they seem. Cross-checks, rotating roles, independent oversight, anonymous feedback loops. These aren't signs of distrust. They're signs of maturity. When you reduce dependence on individual personalities, you reduce the risk of collapse. Because no system should hinge on one leader, one voice, or one perspective. A healthy organization is one where truth has room to breathe, where power is held accountable, and where loyalty is earned, not enforced. That's how you build something that lasts, not through control, but through clarity, challenge, and courage. Betrayal. It's a word we've been taught to fear, to condemn, to run from. But sometimes betrayal is just another word for waking up to what's broken, to what no longer deserves your silence, to what you can no longer defend without betraying yourself. Because not all betrayal is treachery, sometimes it's clarity. And not all loyalty is virtue, sometimes it's poison wrapped in principle. Blind loyalty has destroyed more nations, more companies, and more families than open rebellion ever did. Not because people were evil, but because they stopped asking questions. They let obedience replace thought, and comfort replace courage. Machiavelli never glorified betrayal. He didn't celebrate disloyalty for its own sake, but he understood this. In the harsh arena of power, loyalty isn't always noble, and betrayal isn't always wrong. What he asked us to do, was see clearly, to stop confusing loyalty with goodness, to stop rewarding silence as strength, and to remember that sometimes the person who says no is the one who saves the system. So what does this mean for you? It means you have a choice in your life, your work, your leadership, to surround yourself with comfort or with truth, to reward obedience or reward honesty, to build a culture of fear or a culture of clarity. If you're in a position of power, ask yourself, do people around you feel safe to disagree? Do they challenge you or just echo you? Because if you're only hearing what you want to hear, you're already headed toward collapse. Not because of enemies outside, but because no one inside can stop what's coming. And if you're not in power, but part of a system, your voice still matters. Speak with integrity. Ask the hard questions, not out of rebellion, but out of loyalty to something bigger than yourself. That's the real test of loyalty. Are you willing to be uncomfortable in service of the truth? Are you willing to risk something to protect what matters? In the end, it's not betrayal that brings down great systems. It's the silence of those who knew better and said nothing. It's the loyalty that became blindness and the fear that masqueraded as respect. So remember this, betrayal sometimes is awakening. Blind loyalty sometimes is poison. And Machiavelli didn't ask us to betray, he asked us to stay awake.